Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester Chats with writer and comic book legend DG Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another month of the Chichester Chats. Of course, it's me, Phil. It's Lilith. Yeah. But the man you're all here to see, the man, the myth, the horror writer himself, Mr. DG Chichester.
Hello, guys. So we're going to spend the next 50 minutes or so like just trying to solve this, right?
Nice.
Make it work. It's a mini version, but so for the Patreon feed, do you get everything, or do you get just
Well, we usually try to do exclusive episodes, but also maybe like early access to interviews and stuff.
So it's a bargain. So it's a deal.
Exactly.
Good.
You get little uncensored little Hellfire off the leash. I mean, come on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's nice. There you go.
That's where
that's the special features come in. It's no bleeps. Excellent.
All right, but today we're here to talk. Yes, this man had a story in this issue.
I had a lot of that issue stands out, sure, but I was
a bunch, but this is the one we're talking about today. Yeah,
I have lots of questions. This is right in my wheelhouse.
I have lots of questions. What's the matter with you? What's wrong with you? Well, go for it. Go for the questions.
Let's
dig in or set it up or however you want to approach it.
How did you become the editor for the main book?
When did you first realize you were seriously disturbed? Well, that was fortuitous. That's the be careful what you ask for, because sometimes you get it. So Archie Goodwin, who was my boss at Epic and mentor, I would say to a large degree, among many things, was famous for his work in the Warren publishing, eerie, creepy, very famous, horror anthologies. And as a horror fan, I had always been bugging Archie, let's do something horror related like that at Epic. Let's do a horror anthology when Epic Illustrated was still running, which was a anthology magazine that had sort of launched Epic in some ways. There were sometimes horror stories in there, but not, a full on horror approach to things. But Archie was very smart and cautious about that, and the fact that horror doesn't sell, and it doesn't, certainly not going to sell without a real hook to it. Mm-hmm. So, while I in the stupidity of youth, would like, curse you, what do you know? Which he knew a lot. But in Marvel's many owners across that time, Marvel was bouncing from owner to owner. It was starting to go through its different financial growths and fits and starts. At one point, they had been purchased by New World Pictures. New World Pictures, did a sort of like the next step up from like Roger Corman sort of productions. And among their properties was a movie called Clive Barker, was Hellraiser, directed by Clive Barker. And so one of the guys who was working at New World Pictures, a guy named Eric Saltzgaber, who had become a good friend of mine and a creative guy, was working in the foreign licensing department, had aspirations for bigger things for himself, but also had aspirations to want to do comics. And he knew Clive. And so he contacted Marvel and, said, we own you. And
start a conversation.
And Clive Barker would like to meet with Archie Goodwin, about something. And so word of this got back to us, obviously. So the meeting was set up, and at that point at Epic, Mark Chiarello, who would later go on to become the art editor at DC for a long stretch. Very, very talented guy. He had chosen to take a job at Epic as our receptionist, or just to kind of get in the door of comics. I mean, it was so far
you could
so far below like Mark's capabilities, but he was our receptionist, the Epic like sort of admin. He'd answer the phones, he'd direct things, he'd meet people as they kind of came in. And so it was his job to meet people who were coming in, to the office. Well, we got the call back from the front reception. Well, Clive Barker's here. And, in a total fanboy moment, I like squeed, and just basically like pushed Mark out of the side, to the side, because I was all of a associate editor at that point, and, ran to the front, to meet Clive Barker, who was, in his, total prime with his swagger and charm and, style, and it was very, very nice. Hello, nice to meet you. But could have cared less. He was there to meet Archie Goodwin, right? So I took him back to Archie, and they went to Archie's office. The door closed, and that was it. So after that meeting, as Clive left and did not say goodbye to me, but Archie, then came into the office and did say, in essence, be careful what you wish for, because you just got it. And he said, Clive wants to do a Hellraiser comic, and this is the hook, that Archie had been looking for. Right here was a identifiable name value property, both in terms of Clive Barker and both in terms of Hellraiser, which was, well known. The second film was probably on the cusp of coming out, so it had legitimacy and something to build an anthology around, as opposed to just Epic's Tales of Terror or something like that. And so then we had to figure out, okay, well, what do you do? Like, how do you do this? So that was I was just selected, as that editor, fortuitously, also because it was clear my interest was in, the horror world. And so then we began a series of meetings with Clive, which also included Eric Saltzgaber, because, Eric had made it clear he wanted to get involved in comics. And we sort of saw him as a conduit to Clive. We didn't have the relationship yet. He did. And somehow we also got this guy, Phil Nutman, involved. And Phil was a horror writer on, at some level, been published in some instances. And Clive had mentioned him, and we sort of got it in our heads because we didn't know all the relationships, that Phil was part of Clive's inner circle. Not so much as it would turn out, but but because we didn't know, we invited Phil to some of these initial, meetings. And that's where we started to kind of work out the particulars of, well, what are the unanswered questions from the Hellraiser movies? What's this, how does the box work? What's the box called? Why are they Cenobites? What's the genesis of the Cenobites? If you've seen the second film, what's the big black diamond, in the middle of hell, and all these things. And Clive didn't have all the answers. He had some answers, or he had the beginnings of answers, but he also was this great collaborator. He's like, well, what do you think? Or what if it's this? And then we would, so it wasn't a dictate. It was much more a kind of a creative back and forth. And then it became my job to take all that and distill it down to a Bible, like a series Bible that described what are those unanswered questions, what are those sort of tenets of hell that creators would want to use in the story, and make a pitch at the same time to the creators that we would then want to reach out to and say, we want you in this anthology, and here's what it's all about. So we would end up preparing that Bible as an invitation, to many people to want to come play in the book.
Nice.
Is there all right, you first get the job. What names are you immediately like?
Everybody
on the book, everybody,
every top name I could think of. We didn't, we can't go after so and so. I aimed at everybody. Now I did not hear. Yeah, I didn't hear, and And I don't mean everybody good, everybody who was on, I went after the Frank Millers, I went after the Alan Moores, I went after the Neil Gaimans, I went after the Walt Simonsons, I was not shy about wanting this to feel like a A-list book. And, which, and you can see some of that, like even in the first issue, where I had a lot of influence over the book, even after I'd left staff and then became consulting editor instead of, the main editor.
Which at this point for 13 you were, right?
Yeah. Because I left soon after the book launched. But by 13, I was consulting editor. So I was still writing the intros. I was, weighing in on some.
I like this intro, by the way, for 13.
Yes. Oh, the intro. Yes.
And I didn't realize it was an every 6-week thing. I just thought you guys were always late.
No, it was a weird schedule, and then and it shifted the schedules, a few times. So it was that was just a sales decision of whatever, and probably didn't work in our favor. But a lot of certain things did. But that first issue has Ted McKeever in it, which was Ted was a bit more of a bright star, and sort of the alternative, comic front. We've got Bernie Wrightson in that first issue. We didn't shy away from good names. In fact, we sort of leaned into them. But as I said, Phil, I didn't hear back from everybody, but started to hear back from a fair number of really good people with some, intriguing ideas, and some people I heard back from with some half-baked, half-assed ideas, and some of those I was smart enough to reject, and some of those I was not so smart and, bought.
Is that like a skill unto itself, like adapting like a pre-existing like movie or TV show?
Oh yeah.
The fans are gonna have their opinions. You know this as a comic book fan when we watch those movies.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that that's the difference with this one, is that we were not slavishly tied to only certain concepts of the film, right?
It's based on a novella, and he kind of expands it, but it takes a while for him to get back actually to expand.
Right, but it wasn't all like, oh, everybody needs a Lamont configuration, and it's only like, oh, I solved the box and bad things came out and I got dragged to hell, right? It was about obsession. It was about there are always puzzles, but the puzzles were different things. Mm-hmm. So we interpret it in that way. What were the Cenobites really trying to do? What was the edict of them being these priests and priestesses, of hell, and so that became something underlying to the stories, and it allowed us to explore some things in very, very different ways. I'm really proud of that lineup in that first issue, especially. There were many good issues and there were many good stories across the run of the book, but I think that first issue really like nailed the combination. The Warm Red, which is the Bernie Wrightson, Jan, Strnad story, which has an interesting little tale behind it if we want to get into that. But that's a direct, hard, nasty, biting story, right? That's hardcore, like Hellraiser, not film noir, sort of feeling to it. Ted McKeever's story is this surreal fever dream, right? The mother, right, solves the puzzle box, and yet she's got a fetus within her. So
when the fetus lets you know you're going to be in for a ride.
Right. But like how bizarre and totally perfectly Ted McKeever and wonderful is that story to explore things from that perspective, right? That would never have been considered if you were tied just to open the puzzle box, chains come out, you go to hell, right? The Cenobite could care less about the fetus because you didn't solve the puzzle, your mother solved the puzzle. You're not on my list, and therefore what's left for the fetus, but that was the territory you could then explore if you allowed yourself to kind of open up. So my responsibility, and then Marcus McLaurin's responsibility, is, you know, as he would take over, you know, as editor, you know, was was to try to balance that, you know, balance out the obvious stories, you know, the ones that were like, oh yeah, you open the puzzle box and trains come out in hell, and wow, look how grisly that is, and oh, isn't that wild? I mean, I just read some new horror anthology, and it was like, oh, we got the top names, and you know, we got it's new cutting edge in horror, and every story was just some bullshit, you know, like bad EC comics, you know, evil O. Henry, a twist at the end, and everybody, you know, gets torn to shreds. Like, that's not interesting, right? There's nothing clever. There was nothing really affecting, to me in terms of horror. But that does not mean we were always successful, right? Sometimes you would buy a story and maybe the writer couldn't pull it through, or maybe the artist ended up being, some, racist bastard who I had to, like, give him a kill fee because he would just draw awful characters. And that happened, and
Wow.
so then that story didn't pan out, quite as well. But you try, you end up. I was always a big fan of Rod Serling, who created the show The Twilight Zone, which was an anthology, and he famously said, a third of the stories are shows are really great, a third of them are okay, and a third of them are dogs. And maybe that's the formula for anthologies, not intentionally, but when you bring so much together,
It's a statistics game. Yeah.
it may balance out. But if I could go back with more hindsight and experience, I would.
Is this one of your favorite editing experiences, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I mean it. I mean, I know I'm obviously much more well known for Daredevil and my table at the
To some
conventions,
people,
as you
the
know,
uncultured people, maybe.
is filled with Daredevil shit, because that's what people want to see and talk about and see. But I mean, the Clive Barker work is, which would include this, and then Nightbreed, and then the Hellraiser Nightbreed crossover. I did.
Let me tell you, this and Sliders is some of my favorite work you've done outside of
Thank
Daredevil.
you.
So
Yeah. Well, but this is yeah. I found this experience to be probably the most enriching, like, kind of creative experience, and learned a lot and had to lift a lot, and then you're dealing with at that point an A-list talent who was, I would say, arguably, or maybe inarguably, like, at the height of his powers at that time. He was a best-selling author. He was, an in-demand, filmmaker working on multiple films. He was doing plays. He was doing appearances. I mean, he was sort of everywhere. He was the enfant terrible, you know horror and stuff at that point. And it'd been really easy to be blown off by that guy and kind of be expected by it. But he was very, creatively collaborative and open and available to everybody who worked with him. And I, that meant a lot to me.
I mean,
very
yeah.
cool to know. So
Mhm.
why did you specifically choose this story, Dead Things Rot?
Well, Mike Mignola had come to me, and said, I want to do a Hellraiser story, and I want to do it with you, which was like, oh, holy shit. So you don't say no. And this predates Hellboy. This predates Hellboy. But Mike had always been interested in horror and monsters, and certainly that would later lead to probably like that whole Hellboy universe. So I don't remember all the puzzle parts of it, exactly as it were. But I believe he definitely had the idea for the the Cenobite, that clownish figure, there. That was, something he wanted to specifically, work with. And he may have had its little pet, as well, like that he wanted to incorporate into the story. And I think he had, the idea of a guy who was, maybe I can't remember all the particulars. If he had the idea of the guy who was going to rot at the end or not, at that. But they were sort of like good hooks, if you will, to kind of get things going. So, obviously I had yes, thank you. I had a very easy in, to the editorial, group with Hellraiser, and so it was not a hard pitch to say me and Mike Mignola want to do a story, for Marcus to, say yes to. We'll find a spot. So I mean, I tried not to abuse that. It wasn't like I said I have to be featured in every issue or something. Maybe I should have, but but that would have gotten old and not been appropriate, for what we're trying to do with the book. So that was sort of the genesis of the pieces, and then from there I extrapolated a lot of the particulars of the story and obviously the script and some of the twists and turns and the way we did the TV things as the announcements and stuff. But that was all Mike, then obviously bringing that to life and adding that extra character to it, and that would have been done 99% certain as a Marvel plot style. So I would have written the plot like in detail, like you've seen with the Daredevil stuff I sent you more recently, and describe things. Mike would have illustrated it, and then I would have gone back in and done the scripting.
But yeah, I love the twist, the whole, be careful what you wish for, or like, don't make that deal with the devil. I mean, it is very Twilight Zone-esque, but again, a lot of this is, you're going to get stuff like that. But again, I love it, and that's a Chichester line. Lilith, death rot.
Oh yeah.
Dead things rot. Yes.
And dead things rot. Right. Yeah, it's, after all that preamble, we did a few minutes ago about like, yeah, Hellraiser could be all these things and it could be all these things. This is probably the most typical of your types of Hellraiser stories, right? You're bad thing, you open the box and bad things happen. And bad things happen to bad people. So it's and I sent you that link to that review, just as sort of like an example of, okay, it's gotten some good attention, at least one good attention, over the years, which is nice. So you can execute that type of story really well, but I would not say this was the most ambitious of Hellraiser stories, but I think for this type of story, it was really well executed, and certainly that's in no small part, due to Mike Mignola, bringing all his style and visual effect, because as we've talked about before, that influences how you bring the story to life from the point of view of a writer, which is why I much prefer that plot script format as opposed to writing it all out ahead of time and saying, see you in the published pages, Mike. It's seeing what he did and how he rhythmed things out, really influenced me and helped me, then hit the beats and the lines and the attitudes, just the look of the I'm sure like there was obviously some reference point about the little pet, kind of, looking over to the main Cenobite, can't we spare him, master, or like, mercy or some shit like that, or whatever it was. And but the particular look, Mike put on the face, I'm sure sweetened that line, tremendously by the time I would finish writing it.
But, and again, like as someone coming from no writing background at all, I mean, you said, oh, it wasn't too ambitious. It's like, how ambitious can you get with a short story like this, where odds are you're probably never going to get back to this, maybe? So you're gonna, you kind of have to wrap everything up in a
two-parters within this
well,
reality. So
yeah,
between,
and,
but yeah.
and you right. Go ahead, Lilith. Sorry.
No, that was a good point Phil brings up. But I just want to let them know there are two-parters in this.
Okay, yeah.
Really good. Actually, one that's in this issue.
I think you always have to be ambitious, and the McKeever story is an example of that. Like total weirdness, total like I'm going to some totally strange, new place, and that you didn't expect, and not that all the big shots of the whole series were not just in issue one. As I said, there's lots of good stories along the way, but one stands out in my mind for a lot of good reasons. But Shali Fish, who was not a well-known writer, at that point, was featured in that first issue, and Shali came in, with that Western story is the one. If you've read the first issue, but and if you haven't, I won't give it away. But Shali came in. I didn't know Shali that well, and he worked in the office, so it was one of those things where you can get into the editor's office and they pitch stuff. And he starts off the story, and the way the story starts off, it feels like the most expected thing in the world. And I remember like being, oh God, kind of like rolling my eyes inside my head, not to Shali, all right, finish up, because I know where this is going. And then he delivered where it does go, and it was holy shit, you just sold me the story. So you can be ambitious, and he was. He saw that angle to come at it, and not only did he sell the story, but it was like, because it was a good balance against what else was going to be in issue one. It's sort of like, okay, this is a great way to put this in issue one and show the range of things that we could do, as opposed to, oh, I'm just going to open up and I don't know if there was a good Freddy Krueger comic, but I'm assuming that at some point there was a bad Freddy Krueger comic that was probably just, I went to sleep and Freddy killed all my friends, and hopefully there was a good Freddy Krueger comic at some point. But but I think we tried to hit all the beats, right? You had John Bolton's cover, which was your expected Pinhead. You had, as I said, the Bernie Wrightson story, which was this hard, Jim Thompson style, like, nasty people, nasty events. You had Ted's weirdness, you had Shali's, good twist on things. And that's where you show the range, I think, of like what's possible, like beyond the movies. I wrote the movie, the catch line, for the poster, which I don't think the promotion group was happy about, but which was like, movie, stories, something like stories the movies don't dare unleash, or something like that. And in some ways that's true, right? Because the Hellraiser films would then have to conform to some extent, especially after Clive's, probably stepped away, and they fell into almost like a production line of things. Yep. It becomes harder for the films to be something new, and they just begin to follow the same pattern of, oh, let's do probably a Hellraiser story in the olden days. Let's do a Hellraiser story in space. It's like you could track it up against
80s and 90s movie had to,
right.
You had to have a space one.
Right. You could you could draw parallel lines between like Hellraiser and Leprechaun, and probably three or four other
meetup.
3 other crappy franchises that you're not initially crappy franchises, but franchises that became maybe less effective, and they all follow the same weird roadmap. But that's what we weren't trying to, we were certainly trying to avoid that with the comics.
No, I was really sad when it disappeared in '94. I was just like, what do you mean it's canceled? So sad. Me and my dad really love these books. We love the movies, the novel, the whole franchise, honestly. And in case you don't know, there's like literally 11 Hellraiser movies. The most recent one is a reboot. A rebootable, or however you want to put that.
The Hulu one, the one with the female like priestess. Yeah, I saw that. It was stylish. I mean, but I wasn't.
I think hopes.
I think it was like on the cusp of like introducing. It introduced a couple of new things, and then it was like, oh, maybe this can go someplace, and then it sort of fell back onto some expected behavior. But I think I liked it better than Romulus. Alien Romulus.
Phil, have you seen that yet?
No, I will see it.
Alien or Hellraiser?
No, Romulus. It's a running joke at this point now.
Oh, okay. Well, if you've seen any of the other movies, you've seen Romulus. So, all
right.
There's a couple moments in there where it's like, oh man, you're gonna do some original stuff. No, you're not. You're gonna fall back on like a bunch of like fanish stuff.
Yeah, that just kind of blew my mind. Like when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, because it's well, when we're recording this, it's October. So, I love Halloween. I love horror movies. I love gory horror movies and stuff like that. So I was just like, yeah, I think I'll do Hellraiser this year. And I was like, wait a minute, 10 movies? I don't remember this.
Yeah, no,
I stopped at 4 or something like that.
That's about where I remember. I was vaguely aware of the space one, but I never saw it. And then I had heard, again, some within the last year, that there were, oh no, there's like 7 of them or 9 of them or something. But I have no idea where they went. Obviously, they replaced Doug Bradley at some point, and
yeah, it became like in the like late 90s, early 2000s, where everything was straight to VHS and DVD.
Right.
That's kind of where Hellraiser, Leprechaun, a lot of those like classic iconic movies that did get like 1 to 3 releases in theatrical just go straight to the farm, the production farm.
Yep. Yeah. It's yeah, that's the Hulu thing. Again, it seems like it might, has the potential to reboot it, or I don't know if there's other things planned with it,
or just to keep the IP alive so nobody
yeah,
steals it.
yeah, could be that too. I mean, as I said, I think it was more. I mean, there was the typical, excuse me, BS reaction of, oh my God, it's a female Seminobite.
Yeah.
Honestly, you're really worried about that?
Do Hellraiser? You're shocked by this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this anthology this much. I thought this was a great choice. I love getting your insight, especially about like how you became to be the editor and stuff. That's just so interesting. Like I love epics though. Like I you're like a walking history book for epics too. So that's also a bonus for me. So yeah.
No, Epic was
so yeah. You say it's not ambitious, but at least it's well done. I love the ending. It just was like, yes. And then all the stories also in this issue really flowed well together. A lot of them tend to actually, and I had another question about that. Do you guys like try to pick stories that have like similar themes for each issue? Do you remember, or just whatever came in?
No,
was a happy coincidence?
We did. I mean, we did. I mean, there was either a theme, or you're looking for the balance, right? I reconfigured. As we're talking, I'll probably get dragged to hell. But no, you would either look for a theme, or you would look again for things that would try to balance each other out. Like one hardcore story, one story that might be more thoughtful or surrealistic, one story that might even have some humor. You might do one far future story, and then base it off against like a medieval story. So there was definitely like a sense of how do these things kind of connect together, as opposed to a rando pile of stories. I think the later one-off collections, like the Hellraiser summer special or the Hellraiser Christmas special, which were like, what the hell were we thinking?
It was probably sales, to be honest. It's
no,
always
that was well, no, that was, yes, it was, but it was also that was clearing out inventory at that point. That was the book had ended, I think, or was close to ending. There were still like a lot of stories that had been purchased and were in the art files. And so to maximize, the investment in them, they've been paid for, was to collect them into these things and at least get them out there. And then, I wrote, I know the BS, sort of framing devices around the summer special and the holiday special one, to sort of like try to lightly stitch them together, which were fun to do, but were, I would not say they were my proudest.
Real business back end of it all, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they were very much more EC comics in my mind than they were, Hellraiser type things. There was just little evil bits of, it was like an anthology movie from the 80s or 90s, Tales from the Hood or something, where you've got some weird, which actually has a couple of good episodes in it, but where you're trying to kind of lightly tie the stories together because there's some weird old guy telling the tale, and then at the end you find out that that weird old guy died 15 years ago. But so not that there are bad stories in there. There are actually a couple of really good stories in those specials, but those were, I would say, much more, we got a collection of stories, we got to get rid of them, let's push them through. But you do get on the holiday special, if you've never seen that one, probably one of the most twisted, Kevin O'Neill covers, and that says a lot. It being Kevin O'Neill, his Cenobite, when the burning Santas and the chimney and all that stuff, some good stuff. I might make that my Christmas card this year. Who knows?
On that list. I'm the opposite of Lilith. This was my first time reading this series because I think, like you were saying, you're more well known for Daredevil. I think a lot of that probably has to do with distribution. Because again, what was this issue 92? I was still at the mercy of like spinner racks and newsstands, this was probably what direct market.
Yeah, totally direct market. This was not,
I hadn't discovered the direct market yet, so that's it never came across my radar. But no, I read this. This is the kind of horror I like more than slashers. And I mean, that's all fine, but it's like, someone makes a deal with the devil or some demon. And then of course, it helps it's a bad person. So when they come to a bad end, it's like, oh, okay, well, they got what they deserve.
You can squeak with glee, like, yes, you're getting your
right.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I love stories like this just because it's like, during the story, your mind, the gears are turning in your mind. It's like, okay, I know you shouldn't have made that deal. How is this going to go bad? How is this demon going to screw you over? And
right. And he's a bad guy to begin with, the protagonist, so
we meet him in hell first. So it's like,
right. But there's interesting, again, I think that's what I really enjoyed about the first Hellraiser movie, that made such an impression, on me, even though, there were certain aspects of it that were like a little rough around the edges. But it was the weirdness and the uncertainty of things, and the dreadfulness of it. Like, I don't mean like it was a dreadful movie. I mean, it was filled with dread, right? If you've seen the movie, right, it's got the great Christopher Young score. It's got, that guy coming out of the floor, Frank. It's, it's the unanswered questions. What exactly is that puzzle box doing? Why do these Cenobites, arrive? The trippiness of like the promise of what they're saying, it's not just like, oh, we're dragging you to hell. It's like, no, this is, pleasure, pain, it's all this mixed together, which was, a lot of Clive's influences, were, things from, worlds of bondage and sadomasochism and there was a whole subculture, then I would then invest myself in to learn about like some feelings of things like, what does it mean when you scar your body, or, why do people do this and how does it feel? And these are things that, I would incorporate into some of the writing in Hellraiser. And certainly when I did the crossover, the Hellraiser Nightbreed crossover, which kind of treated those two cultures as their own thing, but trying to kind of get in the head of a Cenobite and not just make it about like, I'm the Lord or Lordess of Hell. It's like, what are they? Why do they look this way? Why do they function this way? What are they offering to people that you get out of this, box, that you're, wanting? Why are you so obsessed with solving this thing? The promise is not just like, oh, it's filled with gold. It's like, there's got to be some sense of that otherworldly experience. You get a little bit of that in an interesting way in that newer Hulu film too. I think Lilith, they play a little bit more with that, but I don't think they go quite far enough.
Yeah. That's the thing when you're trying to like reintroduce something to a new generation. You have to kind of taper it to their sensibilities. But then I think a lot of that gets lost in translation when they try to do that, because
Well, right. I mean, I remember reading an interview with Clive, and he was positive on the movie and where it was going, so he would know better than I, in that regard. But yeah, like I said, I think that there was there's certainly respect for the source material. I think they were trying to do some new things. To my mind, it didn't quite stick the landing in the world, in building out an existing world in a new way, as opposed to say Prey, if you guys have saw that Native American Predator, right, film, which I thought was like, holy mother of God, that was like just, you took that franchise and you flipped it and you made it, you reintroduced that to a new generation potentially, and yet there's not a wasted moment or a wasted beat in that movie, to my mind. I remember watching that movie and going right back and rewatching it, right again. It was
Well, if you ever want to guest on a podcast dedicated to that source material, we have friends.
I thought that was so amazing. I rarely have done that. I've done that twice. I think I did that on that, and I did that with What We Do in the Shadows, the first film. And I just I remember watching that movie, like going back and watching it all over again, and just.
I do think the Fox purchase was one of the best purchases Disney has ever done. I was bitter about it, but I think it's in the long run, it's kind of worked out for them.
Oh yeah, it's great when you can see, like, Frozen right up against Pearl, on the Disney Channel. I'm waiting for Maxine, and that kind of thing, right up against Inside Out 2 and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's good. Not quite as much of a hellscape of a mismatch of like properties as HBO became, but it'll get there.
So reading this back, is there anything you would change or want to do differently
with this story? No. I mean, I remember, again, I was very flattered, like Mike, had asked me to work with him on this, and it was exciting to do. And I remember feeling and rereading it, sort of, well, I can't remember all the, like, as I said, the ins and outs details, or how much more did he bring to the table beyond, like, I want to use this demon. And
well, we have him on the line to correct you. Okay.
No, that's fine. I mean, like, that would be awesome. I mean, I would take that correction if his memory is better than mine, and probably is. But I think it was, no, I remember it being a great experience, and, feeling that, the beats in the story were strong, and, it hit that last note, really well. And it had that sense of tightness and rhythm, we've talked about, and that I think I always try to kind of go for, and, mostly achieved in those kind of, beats and like plays and the lines, and then, a payoff in that final frame, which within a shorter story is again challenging sometimes, but really came together well. So this is not one where I would like go and say, oh, I wish I could have fixed that. And sometimes you look at those stories and you could have done it at that point, but you didn't because of deadline or laziness, or you forgot. And sometimes you look at it and it's just like, I didn't have the skills to do it at that point. Now I can look at it and say, oh, I would have done that this way. But this one, no, it nails the, nails and slices and dices. It's in, intention in the right way.
I don't know how I should put this. No. It's a question. No, it's a question. It's not a commentary. No. No, I was gonna say, I don't know if you would say, I don't know if I want to say, is it your favorite? But are you most comfortable writing in the horror genre, would you say, or?
I would like to be most comfortable writing in the horror genre. I mean, I enjoy horror a lot, and I certainly was thrilled to have these major opportunities to work on these properties, like Nightbreed and Hellraiser, and extend things out in this way, and run with them in the way that I was allowed to do. Right. Again, there was no constraints. There was no, I mean, there were constraints, but there were the constraints that we had established with Clive, and that it was very important to us, all of us working on it. Myself, I'm talking editorially, like myself, Mark McLaurin, Greg Wright was instrumental, like in a lot of this as well. To honor Clive's world, to be true to what we felt was his intention, that we had either talked about with him directly, or that we sort of felt, was the worlds that he was kind of creating, and honor those. So I felt that I was given a lot of license, to explore these very strange, dark, twisted ideas and invest yourself in them, and bring these worlds to life. And I really, really enjoyed that. I don't know if my abilities were always as strong as my ambitions, but I think that they were, they were in a really good place. So I really enjoyed it. And I Jihad, which was the name of the Hellraiser Nightbreed crossover, with Paul Johnson, was a property that, maybe we talk about it at some point, down the line, but, that's a book that should never have worked. But I think I hold that up as like, if I did nothing else, that's sort of like my A-list book, right? That book wrote itself. I mean, there was so much I had sort of invested myself in and read and researched and done over time, working on all these things and sort of feeling like I got Clive's world. And when he, called me and said, all right, so when are we doing the Hellraiser Nightbreed crossover? And I was like, there's a Hellraiser Nightbreed crossover. That was no, that was a thrill to sort of like say, I don't, I want you. I'm handpicking you, to do this, and to open up that mythology, as he put it, in that way. And he has said, in the past, he was very positive on what we had done there. He said nobody else, would have taken it like in those directions, including himself. And that's good. That's what he wanted. Like, he didn't want it to be
just a clone. Yeah.
Right. Here again is like, just, oh, a Nightbreed solves the box and a bunch of Cenobites come and like slaughter the Nightbreed. There are scenes like that in the book, mind you. But I mean, but that's not all it was about. Or and so so I really, I like that genre. That's, I'm reading.
Would you ever consider pitching a new horror, like a new horror anthology, to any current comic book companies? I mean,
I
want
don't
more
know
Chichester material out here, and I like the horror work. So
no, thank you. Yeah, and I do too. And I don't think an anthology, so much, probably for the same reasons, like, Archie said. I mean,
a lot of work, a lot of hoops.
Well, but it's also like, what does it do? What does it sell? How does it kind of gel together? Like that horror anthology I mentioned earlier, that I just read. We got the top names. We're doing, with the top people, and I'm sorry, it's a load of crap. I mean, it was very, it was. I mean, I don't know if that was, they thought it was good. It's hard, it's hard to do those type of stories and deliver on them and not just be an EC comic, either morality play or, oh, look, we did a twist. And there's an indulgence in gore. I mean, I have no shyness about gore but when you just kind of like, look, we ripped everybody apart, and look, it's all over the comic page, and look, we did it with a special ink so it wipes off on your fingers, so you get, that would be cool, right? That'd be a cool gimmick. But I would like to, I wouldn't mind doing a horror comic, that was a horror themed story. I mean, that's what I was doing with Axel's, Infernal.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
Certainly,
in the vein.
That's that's there. This project, that I was talking about before.
Your itch, huh?
Yeah, no, a little bit, and I think there's definitely other places to go. This other project I was saying, isn't quite together yet. Would definitely have a horror-ish, I think, elements or themes, to it, and I've been doing some research in preparation for hopefully that happening, and I'd like to sort of explore that, and there are some fabulous examples of that out there. I think there's I mean, Harrow County was like, I don't know if you guys have read that, but that was like a revelation to me. I didn't know about that until maybe 6-8 months ago, and to me that was like, oh my God, this is so good, just intimate, dreadful little, again, filled with dread, sort of stories that are about its own world and its own horrors and its own monsters and its own dark magic and such. So it's certainly achievable, and that would be a great place to play again.
Yeah, that's one of my faves, Colin
Yeah,
Bowen.
yeah,
From Dark
definitely.
Horse. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool.
So I mean,
I'm so sick of hearing about Colin Bunn.
No. Colin Bunn's great. No, I was just gonna say. I mean, is like stories like Axel's Infernal. Is it better? Do you enjoy it better because it's like, okay, here's the idea. This is what you're gonna get every issue. With the anthologies, is it just a pain in the ass because you have to find a new hook every issue? It's just like, okay, like you were saying about you and Lil talked about different themes for each issue. Every time it's just like, okay, we have to come up with something different every single issue. But it's like,
well, from an editorial point of view, certainly. I mean, if somebody was to offer me like, hey, we want you to write a story for something, I would, I would say sure. I mean, I was talking to Mark Nelson, a couple of months ago, and he's been doing this whole werewolf thing, and on his own, and we mentioned something, we started talking about something. I had this idea for like a werewolf story based on it, and I just wrote it, and I sent it to Mark, not expecting him to illustrate it. He's like, oh, this is cool. But so those springboards come out there. So like, if anybody wants to illustrate a 8 or 12 page werewolf story, hit me up. But because it's sort of sitting there. But I would not want to put my energies behind an anthology and manage all of that on my own, right? If I was invited into an anthology, I would be all for figuring out do they have any ground rules? Is it just, here's a scary story? Or if I write 4 more or 3 more, 10 or 12 page, monster stories or something, then maybe I would go and find artists and collect them and put them all together. But I would rather think about a longer form story with characters that you could sort of build on. Like that's just more enjoyable. Like you're doing some real, it's heavier lift, that you're building a world and you're trying to make sure everything delivers on it. But I would rather put the energy into that and see if that has an effect on things versus me driving an anthology, right? That's
I'll jump in, but me personally doing that now.
Yeah, I mean, and some people have done that, right? A lot of people I follow on Kickstarter or whatever, and creators, and like, oh, I did a series of like short, little horror stories. All right, great, but they may be the illustrator and the writer, or they're already kind of teamed up. So, that's the thing they wanted to do.
But if you're pumping out like a regular, like monthly or whatever anthology, you need like a team or an organization behind you helping you, right? Correct.
Well, you could do it. I mean, you could do anything on your own.
Yeah.
You don't sleep.
But you're. I mean,
be a lot easier if you have some help.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this, Trevor Fernandez Lenkowitz. I don't know if you know his stuff. He's a guy who's done like a few different series on Kickstarter, especially like an area. I think his first one was like Area 51, and then he's doing something now called Rise. Like an alternative take on like superheroes and superpowers, and but he's kind of like he's a writer, but he did an anthology of supernatural-ish fantastical tales. I think it was called Minutes to Midnight. And he managed it all on his own. He I think it's 4 stories. He found 4 different artists. Maybe he used the same letter or might use some of the same colors. I'm not sure, but he had to manage all that, right? He and got it and Kickstarted it and funded it. He got it all kind of going. He's a smart guy and ambitious, and that was part of him building his brand and his following, and he obviously had these 4 tales in mind that he wanted to kind of get out there. But that's a lift. You can manage all that. You just have to, again, to your point, Phil, like you got to find the people, you got to manage the people, you got to go after the people. What happens if somebody
bails?
Bail. I think actually that might have happened to him on one of those stories. definitely check out his work. It's very, very well done. But he's a smart creator. But yeah, somebody bails, then what do? Somebody takes your money and runs. Somebody promises, pages, and it's weeks, months later, and then you're holding back the whole thing, and then you look, you're the one who looks bad, right?
Yeah.
Because now I got it funded, especially through Kickstarter, and now I look bad. So I just don't, again, if I ended up writing 4 more stories, if we ever get through more of these Axel Infernal things, I've actually written 4 short Axel Infernals stories, that could be an anthology, like on their own, sort of like 4 deliveries, almost like, to different, things, all of which are little different in different places. And those could ostensibly be done by different artists, but it can't do the anthology until sort of like get the main story, out the door, and, finish kind of putting that platform together. But that would be one instance where I would, maybe think about taking those 4 stories. And, I tried to do them as like a tease to Carl to kind of move him along a little more. Like, here, we got these other things we could be doing. And he definitely saw my intention, but it didn't seem to work in that way. Exactly. But that would be one. That would be the only instance I could think of where I do an anthology like project. But that's still building out a world that I'm trying to build out anyway. So I'd be much more interested in doing a horror, occult-ish story that is, something,
something
new, something about character X, and character X's, and, building out.
Is there a franchise that you would love to like just have a book for that's not out?
Like a horror franchise? Wow, that's a cool question. The really good horror things, just sort of like hit you so, so hard. And then I've watched a lot of like horror movies, for October. Generally, sometimes I skip, the Halloween movies, but this year I've been watching a lot of things like Oddity and Talk to Me. Talk to Me was
so good.
Talk to Me was really good. I like Talk to Me better than Oddity. But I liked Oddity, as well. The Late Night with the Devil was pretty good.
Oh, we covered that.
Phil finally watched it. We talked about it.
That was pretty good. Quiet Place, part 1 was really good. Some of it was really good. The cat was way too silent. That cat would have gotten them killed a lot sooner, if you haven't seen that yet. But I can't think of anything, that sort of like jumps to mind that says, oh, that would be, that would be
build that world out.
Yeah, not right at the moment. It's.
Well, you said you hope there's a good Freddy Krueger comic. Spoilers. I mean, no tea, no shade. No, it's not.
Yeah,
there've been a couple attempts, but it's just like I don't think people really could capture the sensibility of the actual horror that like Freddy Krueger is when you think about his backstory. I think nobody ever really wants to tackle that. They just kind of want to go for the titillation of killing teenagers,
Right. I mean, that was right. I mean, I think the 3 high points of the Freddy franchise are 1, which is like, oh my God, what just happened? A little bit. Was it Dream Warriors? Has some interesting stuff going on, and then
they did a comic based on that timeline.
Did they? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's only a one-shot though.
Right.
And I know Marvel did. I think it was like maybe 2. They had 2 Freddy Krueger things back in like the 80s.
And those were kind of anthologies, weren't they?
Yeah.
They're like a bunch of like you go
little
to sleep
tiny bits.
Freddy kills you, right? And the new Nightmare one that Craven did was really, I think very strong. But yeah, I mean, Freddy was like I said, the first Freddy thing was it would be an interesting one where you could sort of like go into Harrow County territory. Would be like a Pumpkinhead franchise.
They really let that. They didn't let that be a franchise. It's so many interesting ideas.
Right. Yeah, you could sort of stir the pot and sort of say, that could be your jumping off point to sort of a lot of other, swamp, country, backwoods, sort of stories, a lot of folk horror. Did you ever see you would dig this, Lilith, if you haven't seen this, especially this documentary, Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched? Have you seen
No,
this?
I don't think so.
Oh my God, you have got to see this. It's about a 3-hour documentary, but it flies, I thought. And it is, just a sort of a very detailed review of folk horror and in popular culture and movies, especially. And folk horror is, by their definition, things like the Wicker Man, where like, these, and it's just so many. I mean, I thought I was a pretty good student of film, and there were so many films I'd never heard of from around the world that touch on that. But that sort of feeling of what Pumpkinhead could sort of like be an open door to, that you sort of wanted the film to do more of. I did, and
a lot of fans feel that way.
Yeah, so that's a stretch. We took a long time to get there, but that would be kind of.
All right, we're gonna manifest DG Chichester getting a Pumpkinhead book, guys. Come on.
I was waiting this year for Marvel. Come on, you got those Red Band books now. I mean, come on, a DG Chichester Daredevil versus vampires or something. Come on.
Yeah. Well, they apparently can't figure out what the hell to do with Blade, which is like, what the hell is
wrong
with you guys? How can you not like? It's like, oh, geez, we can't crack the code on this. The guy with the vampire powers hunts vampires. It's like, it's the same reason they couldn't get Secret Invasion to work, right? Oh, I don't know. We're going to do this muddied thing about like depressed spies and trying to do like a bad Jean, Le Carre thing, but as opposed to just disenfranchised, spy refines his mojo and kicks ass. Blade is not, I've done Blade stories. It's not, and you could do a really, really, really good one, or just get Wesley Snipes back at this point.
That's what I was going to say. They had someone else ready to go. Do you think after the success of Deadpool and Wolverine, they were just like, oh, I guess we could bring Wesley Snipes
they've gone through so many directors as well.
I mean, yeah, Ryan Reynolds at this point could like snap his fingers and say, let's do a Wesley, Blade, but then do it. But to drag this other one on for so long, it's, we haven't cracked the code. What are you trying to crack the code on? It's like, it's just swagger and cool and
I think they cracked the code with Deadpool and Wolverine, so maybe we can get a move on it now. Like they're like, oh, people will actually go and possibly give us $1 billion for something that's not PG-13.
And I'd be happy with Wesley at this point. I mean, I was always happy with Wesley. Let him come back, let him do a kick-ass,
Mahershala can be Dracula.
Yeah.
Denzel.
Wesley Snipes is willing to be the next Hugh Jackman.
He will do it till he's 90.
He will do it till he's 90.
Yeah.
And Hugh's gonna have to do it till he's 90 at this point too. So but yeah. I mean, there's certainly horror franchises.
He said he wants to do a Blade book, basically, is what he said. He maybe write the script. Pitch it. I don't know. You got some film. I heard you had some film school education.
I do have that education. It's true.
I'd say you pitch a script, just see what
happens. At this point, you can just go make it yourself, right?
Kickstarter. Go
exactly. Throw your green screen up and just put it together.
Yeah, make that movie. We promised to all go to the theater and in the middle theater just yell, "Man, this writer can cook!"
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we will let you get back to your Saturday. It was very enjoyable.
Yes, a lot of fun.
Well, I was going to say, just to bring it all the way back around, sir, excellent job. You've come a long way. You've come a long way from that young man who was bleeding out on that New York sidewalk.
You do what you can. You reanimate yourself however you can. Excellent.
Yes. Oh, next time, remember, was it last episode we did the Marvel Superheroes #1?
Yes.
Let's do #2 with another DG Chichester Margaret Clark story, this time featuring Tigra.
Oh, with Chuck Patton.
Ray, wake up.
I know.
All right. Well, we will I will dig that up and we will go down that path, touch on all these like cool things. All right, guys. I appreciate you. This is a fun one, and we will chat soon. Happy Halloween, and then we'll work out the date soon. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure. Be good.
Yep.
time for our plugs, suckers.
That's right. Yeah, you don't think we'd do this for free, do you? No, I would. Please, there's anywhere I would just be like, yeah, we don't do plugs over here, but yes, no, we're doing plugs. All right, so yes, the great DG Chichester, and again, too, if you're another creator who would like to chat with us, even just one time like this, yeah, just email me.
Let us pick your brain.
Exactly. See, it doesn't hurt. Chichester just came back for the 37th time. We're friendly.
Don't tell them the number; it'll scare them.
I know. It'll be like, I don't know. After 50, I don't know. No. Just be like, no, I almost sold to the devil, so you keep coming back. All right, so yes, kids. Or if you want to suggest a DD Chichester project we haven't discussed yet, you want him.
Come on, guys! I want some sliders. Send in some feedback.
Yes. I keep thinking about pulling that trigger. All right, so yes, so send us your thoughts. Email CapesandLunatics@gmail.com or call the voicemail 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And of course, support us so we can bring you such quality programming as the Chichester Chats. But you can find all our social media, episodes, social media, merchandise, pick up new Capes and Lunatics merch, the classic stuff. You can also just be very nice so Lilith doesn't come beat you up. Rain ran the money on us through the Cash App link.
Don't make me drag you to hell.
Yes.
Make it rain.
And of course, our Patreon, where again, if you subscribe, you get exclusive content every month. You get early access to interviews. You get.
We're having a Horrorween party for October.
Halloweeny party.
Halloweeny party.
So yes, a completely uncensored, exclusive for our patrons, and of course, yes, if you are a patron, you can suggest topics for us to talk about. Justin has already suggested a few we've done. So yes, tell us what to do at patreon.com/CapesandLunatics or find everything at tubespace.io/CapesandLunatics Podcast Networks, tubespace.io/CapesandLunatics Podcast Network. All right. And Lil says, don't even bother looking for her.
The whole family can suck it.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for yes, another great Chichester Chats. And again, next time, yeah, I knew. I saw that. I was like, oh, is they got another story in Marvel Superheroes? I was like, yeah. Gonna do that Tiger story.
Summer special.
Summer special. Yeah, we're gonna do it in November. Oh, you know what? I have a. Well, I'll tell you some stuff off the air. I have some ideas.
His thoughts.
I have thoughts. Surprisingly. All right, kids. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Chichester. And everyone, come back next time.